Históricos del Premio Internacional Giuseppe Sacsa en Roma, y desde diciembre de 2015 a julio del 2016 trabajó en investigación en la Universidad de Alcalá de Henares en España. Es un gusto para nosotros tener a la doctora Mariachiara Angelucci con nosotros en esta tarde. Doctora, muy buenas tardes y bienvenida.
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias. Lo siento, yo voy a hablar en inglés, pero si hay preguntas, intento responder en español al final. Entonces, muchas gracias. Voy a compartir ahora la pantalla. Un momento. Perdona, es que no. Otra vez, intento otra vez. Okay.
Sí, de acuerdo, no hay ningún problema, doctora.
Sí. Bueno, ahora está bien. Gracias. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for the opportunity to join this tercera jornada de investigación, innovación y transferencia tecnológica. Muchas gracias por la invitación. The title of my contribution is Planning of Green Spaces,
Recording in progress.
Garden Architecture and Experimentation on the Territory. I will, in this lecture, I will address mainly these topics: how the reinterpretation of the ancient world and the revival of the past has led over ages and even today in the modern world to innovative solutions in the field of garden architecture and green areas, and how modern solutions can be combined with enhancement and respect for the environment. I come from formation education, which is ancient history, so I will try to focus on the reception of Roman and Greek style during the ages and up to contemporary times. I will focus on vertical green and on different typologies of parks up to garden cities and on the Greek conversion of disused urban areas. So you have to keep in mind that my formation, my education, I come from ancient history, so I'm not really an engineer, but I will try to let you understand how the Greek and the Roman world has produced over the times a very important inheritance, which can be seen also today. The 20th and the 21st centuries have seen a considerable increase in a concern for the environment and cultural value of the landscape, and in particular of public green spaces. The landscape is a place where traces of the settlement and production system of the past remain and testify to the interaction between man and the environment that change over time in a continuous interplay of innovation and conservation. These traces of settlement and this play between innovation and conservation can be seen from the past, from the very remote past up to now. It is important to understand how the territory was created and developed through human action, because if we want to understand the result of the environment today, it is important to know the origin of the action of the human people on the territory. I will start now my lecture with vertical green, that is with production of green garden in vertical areas. And I will start from the ancient times to let you understand how the ancients have developed this technique, and that this technique, vertical garden, has been reused during the ages, Greek times, Roman times, and then Renaissance up to modern times. It is above all the hanging garden of Babylon, north of present-day Baghdad, that have remained famous in the ancient world for their extraordinary ability to construct vertical green architecture through ingenious hydraulic system and the construction of a green area that extended upwards. The combination of the construction system of the ziggurats with its flourishing vegetation marked forever the imagination of posterity. 6 centuries later, Strabo, who lived in Roman times at the time of Emperor Caesar Augustus, describes these gardens as follows. Babylon itself is situated in a plain, and he describes the Garden of Babylon. He says, whence among the 7 wonders of the world are reckoned this wall, the wall of Babylon, and the hanging garden. The shape of the garden is a square, and each side of it measures 4 plata. It consists of vaulted terraces raised one above another and resting upon cube-shaped pillars. The ascent to the highest story is by stairs, and on their side are water engines by means of which persons appointed expressly for the purpose are continually employed in raising water from the Euphrates into the garden. These gardens, which are considered one of the 7 wonders of the world, are described not only by Strabon, who is one of the most important geographers of the ancient time, geographer and historians, but it is these gardens are described also by other authors, among which Diodorus Siculus, and then Curtius Rufus, Philon of Byzantius, Martial Gregorius Nazarenus. These gardens were considered to have been built by King Nebuchadnezzar II in the 7th century before Christus. And these authors, Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, Curtius Rufus, are lived 7-8 centuries after the construction of these gardens. These gardens were built by this king in Mesopotamia for his wife, who felt nostalgic for the forests and mountains of her homeland, Kurdistan, while she found the flat, sunburnt ground of Mesopotamia depressing. What was pointed out was the hydraulic system, which made it possible to transport the water needed to ensure flourishing vegetation to the top of the high ziggurats. The Mesopotamian area was known not only for its vertical gardens, but also for its extensive parks. At Pasargades, which was the first Achaemenid capital founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century before Christus, the archaeological survey has proven the existence of large fenced and tree-lined gardens with the water features and wild animals. And we can see these cruciform gardens. It presents a simple tetrapartite geometric scheme bordered by porticos on the four sides. The green space had a cruciform layout with a central axis directed towards the portico of the building where the royal throne was placed. Here we have seen two models, the vertical gardens and the cruciform gardens. And these two gardens can be considered as archetype of two models of gardens which will be developed during the ages, not only by the ancients, the Greek and the Romans, but also in the Renaissance and the Humanism up to modern times. It is no coincidence that the word paradise comes from an ancient word, an ancient Persian word. This is no coincidence because the gardens from the very beginning was so important that the meaning, the original meaning of paradise is really garden, but not garden because as we can imagine now, but it comes from the Persian word paradisa, which means literally large gardens, normally gardens, large gardens and hunting parks surrounded by a wall. This was the meaning of this ancient Persian word. The Greek has taken this word in their language and they translated it into paradisos, which means literally garden with surrounded by a wall. And then through the ages, we have reached to the word, to the modern word paradise. When in the 3rd century before Christ, in Alexandria, the Holy Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greeks, the term to indicate the place of eternal bliss was used precisely paradisos. Then this word was taken up by the Christian writers and entered through Latin into modern languages. And so we have the meaning, the word which is now in English, paradise and paradiso in Italian. So these two kind of garden models are kind of archetype and can reveal us how important were gardens in the ancient times. Numerous traces of the use of green roofs can also be found in the Roman period. The Romans were familiar with the Near East through the Greeks and from direct experience following the conquest of the imperial age. A first example is the mausoleum of Augustus in Rome of the 1st centuries before Christus. The outer wall were completely covered with earth and as a symbol of life and eternal glory. As we know from the sources, of course, because there are no rests, well, only there are some rests of the mausoleum of Augustus in Rome, but of course, the green coverage is new only by literary sources. The same can be said about the mausoleum of Hadrian in the 2nd centuries, in this case after Christus, always in Rome. The original building, which was later renovated and modified into the present Castel Sant'Angelo, was also covered with cypress trees. This is now the mausoleum of Hadrian from the 2nd century after Christ, which is now, today, Castel Sant'Angelo in Rome. And this is what can be seen if you go to Rome. But originally, there was a coverage, there was trees as a coverage of this building. There are also some other examples of hanging gardens in Rome, Roman times, that are unfortunately known only from literary sources. The villa of Emperor Adriano in Tivoli, the two villas of Plinio the Younger, and the Villa Laurentina in Tuscany. In ancient times, the use of hanging gardens were not only dictated by reason of prestige. In the Middle Ages, hanging gardens were used in various sectors, in clusters of convents or as a vegetable garden, or in fortification as a cover to cushion the gunfire received in battle. Its prevalent use, however, is to give prestige to buildings and, of course, to the families who owned the buildings. In this case, we can see an example from the 14th centuries, the Guinigi Tower in Lucca in Tuscany, which is a good example of trees at the top of a tower. There was a kind of 250 towers in Lucca at that time, and when the Guinigi family became the master of the city, they decided to build a tower with trees as a symbol of power and rebirth. From the 15th century onwards, there was an important development linked to the use of a roof garden, which anticipated the modern concept of use, that is, the opening up of the architecture to the external use of buildings. Examples in this direction are the Villa Fiesole of Giovanni de' Medici in Florence, and then we have Villa d'Este in Tivoli, which was taken up again, of which I will speak later for the layout of the garden. So there are many examples of the reuse of this vertical garden, also during the Humanism and the Renaissance. And now we can see now what is the modern use of these vertical gardens on top of towers. This Guinigi Tower can be seen as a precursor of what is now the vertical forest in Milan. The vertical forest is a complex of two residential tower blocks designed by the Arboeri Architecture Studio, which is a very, very famous studio, and located in the center of Milan. These two buildings were inaugurated in 2014 and are characterized by the presence of more than 2,000 tree species, including shrubs and tall trees. It is an ambitious project of reforestation that through the vertical densification of the green wanted to increase the plant biodiversity and wants to give a better quality of life to people living over there. These two towers have received very important awards. In 2014, it won the International High Rise Award, and then the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat recognized it as the most beautiful and innovative skyscraper in the world. And then in 2019, has recognized it as part of the 50 most iconic skyscrapers in the world. The vegetation brings numerous good positive effects to the towers and to the surrounding urban environment. It contributes to the constitution of a microclimate that releases humidity, captures small dust particles, produces oxygen, and reduce acoustic pollution, lets light in, and protects from direct radiation and from the wind. And then it guarantees also biodiversity in the forest of the tower. This is not the only project from this architect studio. We have also another very important project always in Milan. We have the project of a therapeutic roof garden on the Polyclinic Hospital in Milano. This project wants to create 6,900 square meters available to patients, and on certain occasions also open to the public. This is a very innovative project that will make life better for patients in the hospital, but it's also a very important piece of architecture, urban and environment work, which can transform the heart of the city, because this polyclinic hospital is in the heart of Milan, as well as the two towers. This is what the architect Boe has written on his website to show what is the aim of his project. He say on its roof there will be a luxuriant hanging garden of over 7,000 square meters, initially reserved for the patient and staff of the various wards, but which in the future will be open to the public for special events and of a recreational and therapeutic nature. Among the main intervention of urban forestation planned in Milan, the roof garden of the polyclinic hospital is enriched by the added value related to the potential chromotherapy of its landscape, the essences changing in different seasons. It also contains a rehabilitation garden with paths of varying levels of difficulty linked to different types of flooring. There are a lot of examples of hanging garden also throughout the world. I have focused in Milan because I'm from Italy, but we can see, we can find a lot of examples as I can show here. These images are taken from the first one from the Expo 2014-15 in Milan, and then there are some images from Asia, the building across Fukuoka in the town of Fukuoka in Japan. Then we have the town, building in the town of Shanghai, and then we have this modern hotel in Singapore. This was my first part of the lecture about vertical gardens. And now I will speak about another kind of garden, which are the Roman villas and the geometric gardens. So the two topics are related because the taste for geometry and for symmetry and for order comes from the ancient times as well, from the Greek architecture and from the Roman architecture. So if the archetype of the vertical green is in the Near East, as we have seen, and has come down to us, we have seen also the cruciform garden after the Babylonian garden. And this cruciform garden is another archetype which will be taken up by and developed, of course, by the Romans. Formal order is a characteristic of architecture and urban planning in Greek and Roman cities, and can also be seen in the structure of gardens. In Roman times, gardens, which were called orti, are well documented. The ortus is a small fenced-in space at the rear of the house, which constitutes the ideal continuation of the utilitarian dwelling. With the passing of the times, this utilitarian dwelling was secondary, and the most important aim was not only utilitarian, but also to create a pleasant atmosphere and place where to live. Here we have a model of an ancient villa of imperial times, where we can see the garden, which are surrounded by walls. Of course, this is already from the imperial time. The first Roman garden were much smaller, and during the imperial time, there was an enlargement in the first two slides from Mesopotamia. So the villas, the Roman villas with the gardens spread first near Rome, and then throughout Latium, and then in all provinces of the empire, according to a model that will be taken up and developed also in the humanistic and Renaissance period, according to the taste of the time. Here we can see the Papiri Ercolano, the Villa Papiri in Ercolano in Napoli, and this Roman villa has inspired the Paul Getty Museum in Malibu in California. So we can see that the taste of the Roman villas have been taken up also in modern times. And this is kind of really a recreation of this part of the villa. In addition to archaeological remains, we know from literary sources, in particular from Plinio, who describe information about villas. The ancient Roman authors describe their villa. Plinius the Younger described in 2 letters his urban villa near Ostia and the villa in the upper Tiber Valley near Città di Castello. The Roman villa was sumptuous and monumental villas and expressed the feeling of the invincibility of Roman power and were inserted into the natural environment with the great works of engineering. The landscape created the natural frame. And then the architectural work was inserted in the landscape in order to exalt its characteristic according to a practice that the Romans had learned from the Greeks. The work of human engineering allowed the building to adapt to the natural environment. The other aspect of the ancient world, particularly the classical one, which were taken up in garden architecture, in the taste for geometric order and a regular layout. Here we can see the Villa of Poggioreale, where we can find a geometric order and also the cruciform garden, which we have seen also in which we have seen as an archetype in Mesopotamia, and then we have seen it also in Roman gardens, in Roman villas. The Roman villas have inspired the humanists who, through the sources at their disposal, tried to rediscover the forms of ancient gardens. Bramante was inspired by the Roman imperial villas when he was commissioned by Pope Julius II to the project to unite Villa Belvedere and the Vatican palaces in Rome. Bramante subordinated the entire composition to a central and symmetrical vision that unfolded on several levels and made the whole a completely innovative architecture, which contained some stylistic innovation, which will later on characterize the gardens of the following decades. These gardens were regular and were organized with the green compartments delineated by hedges and fountains. During Humanism and later in Renaissance, the recovery of the classical order was, on the other hand, in line with the sentiment of the time. The Studia Humanitatis, from which the term humanism derives, placed the man at the center, rediscovered through the reading, so the man is placed at the center, and it's possible to rediscover the man through the reading of the Greek and Latin classics. In this conception, gardens must also reflect the cosmic order through harmony, proportion, symmetry, geometric layout, and a strict control of the relationship between the parts and the whole. The garden of the 15th century, characterized by a regular system governed by geometry, functioned the absolute predominance of Italy in the art of gardens throughout the Renaissance, giving birth to a model, the Italian garden, which will be the premise of the subsequent affirmation of French gardens. Longitudinal axis, along which the main avenue that connects the house with the house unfolds, are the geometrical basis around which the path and the roads are organized. The garden
Doctora. Sí, doctora, disculpe, parece que hubo una interferencia, se anuló la presentación y su micro está desactivado.
Ah, perdone. ¿Desde cuándo está desactivado? Desde... ok.
Recientemente se cortó
okay. Puede empezar desde aquí, ¿sí?
Correcto, ajá, desde ahí, doctora.
Okay. Gut, gracias. Villa d'Este Tivoli canonized the image of the great garden of the Italian tradition with its geometric shapes. The garden is articulated between terraces and slopes and show an architectural scheme which is typical of Roman cities. Roman cities, I mean not Roman villas, but Roman cities, which I don't have here the slide, but the Roman cities were organized through the system called the centuriatio, which was an organization of the territory through roads, very symmetric roads and squares. So this is a kind of development and reproduction also of the geometrical scheme of the Roman centuriatio. In the 16th century, there was a further affirmation of the dominance of man rationality, which controlled everything to the point of reducing nature itself to an architectural form. The geometric order of the structure of the Italian garden was appreciated and reproposed above all in France, where the French Renaissance garden developed its own characteristic and enriched its maximum expression in the 17th century. In the 17th century, with the famous and well-known garden of Versailles, it's of course very, very famous. The transposition of the Italian garden to France and the development of the French garden had a very strong symbolic value, and they were the expression of a state architecture at the service of power. Through symmetry, perspective, and water games, the architect tried to give order to nature and at the same time to create an effect of a theatrical image. The ideas of garden. So yes, before passing to the English garden, we can see here how the formal Italian garden will never really fade away and will be rediscovered in the 19th and 20th centuries. Charles Adams Platt drew inspiration from the Roman villas and the formal garden for the Edith Rockefeller McCormick summer residence in Lake Forest near Chicago called Villa Turicum. We can see here 3 images from the summer residence Villa Turicum near Chicago, which was inspired by the Roman villas and by the geometric gardens. And then the same can be found in the Dumbarton Oaks in Washington, which were designed by Beatrix Jones Farrand and were inspired actually by Italian gardens. More recently, we can find this very geometric architecture of garden in the architect in the cubist garden of Gabriel Kuvrekian. These are recently more recent. We can see here how the development of the classical order, classical I mean the Greek and the Roman, and before the Greek and the Roman, the order and the organization of territory of the Near East has developed through the ages, through the Roman, the Greek time, the Humanist Renaissance, up to modern times, as we can see here in these images. The idea of gardens as a representative of a nation spread through England, but in England we have a reaction that produced an opposite result. The geometric style of Italian and French garden were rejected in favor of a combination of artificial and natural elements, caves, streams, ancient trees, pagodas, pergolas. This is not actually a rejection of the classical order of ancient inspiration, but the enhancement and revival of another aspect of the Roman world, the otium of rural life and the beauty of rural residences. This recreation of the English garden was inspired by the architect and the people who traveled to Italy under the fashion of the Grand Tour. Through this Grand Tour, architects and scholars came to Italy and they saw the Roman villas, the different kind of structures of organization of the Roman territories, and take the inspiration. And in this case, the inspiration came from the otium of rural life, not from geometry, not from the Greek villas, but from the otium of rural life, which was a topic of the Roman Roman scholars. We can see here, for example, the image, an example of this trend with a gradual transformation of Stowe Park in England from a formal geometric space into a landscape park. Another example can be found more recently, and we can see here how the idea of the English garden have come to the continent, so to Europe, can be seen in the English garden in Munich. Nowadays, we can see these gardens which came from the English garden, which English garden came from a revisitation of the Roman otium and from the Roman rural villas and estate. In these kind of parks, the element of the picturesque is predominant. The formal, so we have seen that the Roman and the Greek idea of order has developed in the geometric style and in the Roman villas, and then the Roman idea of otium has been developed in the English gardens in England, and then this solution of garden organization has come to Europe, and we can see here an example in the English Garden in Germany. And now I come to the last topic, greenery and the urban spaces. Through the development of urban green areas in all their forms, it is possible to make cities more sustainable. With the experience of garden cities that were born first with industrial development and then due to the ecological degradation with a consequence of modern economy, the importance of enhancing green areas that contribute to a better life has been understood. It is essential to put the man at the center and to shape an environment that allows a better and healthier life. Le Corbusier has already expressed this topic. After the affirmation of the garden cities, which led to the support of the integration of green areas within the urban scenario, Le Corbusier, who had conceived the project of the Ville Verte, developed a strategy of total rethinking of the urban environment, a new concept of cities based on the dilution of the inhabited centers in parks and gardens. Greenery represented a way of reinventing the city environment. It's no coincidence that he defined himself as an homme de lettres, the last of the great humanism in the history of Western culture, and that he placed the man at the center explicitly referring to the Greek and Latin classics that has inspired humanism and Renaissance. In this rediscovery of greenery as an essential tool for making life more sustainable, urban redevelopment projects are very, we have to remember the urban redevelopment project. It means the project which mean to reconvert industrial areas through public greenery. This kind of project of requalification play a major role nowadays. Among the many examples that can be cited, I would like to mention an Italian example involving the Fiat factory in Turin. The industrial areas previously abandoned and in a state of decay have now become a public park. And now I come to the conclusion. The physiognomy of landscape may change over time. New components may overlap or flank the original ones in a dynamic that sometimes implies ruptures, sometimes continuity. Analyzing the theme of urban green in a diachronic path that leads from the ancient world to the contemporary one allows to highlight the cultural influences that have determined the construction and architecture of the landscape in different historical periods. Modern solutions are often inspired by and grafted onto ideas from the past, reworking them with an absolutely innovative result, which is achieved through knowledge and re-evaluation of the ways in which man has acted on the territory through history. Thank you for your attention. I have finished. I hope everybody could hear me.
Un segundo, Iván.
I have finished, so I don't know if he terminato mi ponente. No sé si,
Bien, muchísimas gracias. Gracias por esta excelente exposición, Angelucci Mariachiara. Definitivamente es un tema sumamente importante. voy a dar lugar a continuación, de acuerdo a las pautas indicadas para la jornada académica de hoy, la lectura de algunas interrogantes en caso de existir en la sala. Si no fuera así, tenemos una consulta que hacer, no sé si se logra entender en el idioma español. Dice de la siguiente manera: interesante exposición de cómo la planificación, espacios verdes y arquitectura de jardines pueden contarnos parte de la historia. ¿Consideras que en la actualidad las áreas verdes empleadas en la planeación urbana cumplen estándares que permiten en años posteriores contar pasajes de nuestra historia?
Sí, claro. Yo creo que estudiar los jardines, la estructura de los jardines puede, nos permite tu entender mejor nuestra propia historia y nuestra identidad. Se puede de verdad crear una historia del jardín paralelamente a la historia de los eventos históricos. Los eventos históricos han determinado la estructura de los jardines. Como yo he intentado demostrar, las soluciones innovativas se encargan, derivan de la historia, de nuestra historia. Entonces, en un mundo globalizado como nosotros, la técnica arquitectónica de los jardines nos permite de dar importancia a nuestra identidad. Los jardines italianos, por ejemplo, las villas romanas se han difundido para el mundo. Entonces, este es un medio para hacer sí que el mundo conoce nuestra historia a través de los jardines. Entonces, sí, yo creo que la historia de los jardines es un poco como es el resultado de los eventos históricos. Un medido, a way to preserve our identity also.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias. Nuestra reiterada felicitación a nuestra ponente de esta tarde, Angelucci Mariachiara. Gracias por estar compartiendo en esta tercera jornada internacional de investigación, innovación y transferencia tecnológica. Muy amable.
Gracias.